Dominating the game has to be the major priority for clubs in Europe. It's no coincidence that we've had huge investors from the Middle East over the past few years in the game of football. Welcome to Sportyfied. My name is Malik Musema, aka that girl Lima. And of course, I'm not going to do this alone. I've got with me Aviero and the Radio Fox to dissect all of the happenings in football with me. Welcome, guys. How are you guys doing?
Oh, I'm doing good.
I do alright.
I mean, how was your, the weekend for you?
It has been up and there, and lots of football actions. Football is fully back into swing, so it's interesting.
Great weekend. Manchester United, we've been on top, so great weekend.
All right. So the first talking point for us today would be the Middle East investors. I mean, we've had, like I said, an influx of investors from the Middle East in the past few years. And I'd like us to talk about the change or the effects they have on the game of football. In the past few years, or since the takeover from the Abu Dhabi investment group at City, or Manchester City rather, we've seen that they've gone on to win a lot of titles and they are the highest spenders. I mean, they spent about £1.5 billion so far on transfers. Closely behind is Manchester United, their City rivals, with about 400 million less or so. So, it's safe to say that this can be a cause for, discussion because I mean, City have gone on to win a lot of titles, but Manchester United, on the other hand, have, relatively not won a lot in the past few years since the investment has happened. What do you guys think of the effects that the Middle East investors have on football?
I think for me, the most important effect they've had is that they've really made the transfer prices to exponentially rise because of the bargaining power that they've had. For example, Patrick Vieira made complaints about the investment from other Premier League clubs, really inflating prices of players way up and making the little teams really struggle, basically. And I think that's the major effect for me. But on the field of play, yes, big money, you attract more quality in all senses, because when you buy player for 100 million, you can be sure that you are buying quality to a large extent compared to you buying player for about 10 million, 5 million. I'm not saying, but not in all cases is the finances is directly related to the quality of players anyways, not in all cases.
How about you, Avera?
So actually, you already said everything safe. There's a form of bullying because most of these guys cannot buy all the things. They'll just buy few things. So it's like there's a sort of bullying between teams. Let's put it that way. Because of the way they pumped money, prices on players have inflated. So you cannot even sign a decent player now for like 20 to 30 million. You start hearing prices like 60 million, 70 million. Small teams can't sign all these players and stuff like that. So yeah.
I'd like to, stick to your points where you talk about bullying. So it is safe to say that, money doesn't buy you goals, but in recent times it feels like the opposite is the case, as these clubs go on to buy a lot of big name strikers that cost a lot of money, like you said, Aviero. I mean, we have big name strikers like Haaland, Mbappe. These guys cost a lot of money, and if you want the goals, you need to go on to splurge a lot of money for these strikers. But talking about Manchester United, is it a case of them not actually spending wisely, or or spending big, or actually spending wisely? Because I mean, they are just a few millions behind their rivals, Manchester City, when it comes to spending for players. But it seems like they've not had as much success as their rivals. What do you think Manchester United can do in this case when it comes to splurging for these players?
So, for Manchester United, I just feel like yes, they wasted a lot of money actually. Signing the players, they actually signing players they not really play that kind of football, but because they are big players, because of the money they might pull off from those players like that. Look at this season so far now. They aren't signing players they actually wanted. The players know that okay, these players will fit into the squad. And he has been scoring goals. We started the season with just 2 games back to back. But look at where they are today. we are doing very good. We've won like 9 straight games now. Signing players with the right mentality. Yeah, it costs money, but once you sign players, all because okay, probably want to sell shirts and stuff like that. I feel like love my pocket, probably not me. But look at Man City, look at Guardiola. Guardiola signs a lot of players. Players you might not even have heard of. He went to sign Rodri from Atletico Madrid. Rodri was on the bench. Rodri wasn't even starting games for Atletico Madrid when Guardiola signed him. But look at Rodri now in the Premier League. The best defensive midfielder in the Premier League, like arguably. Yes. So yeah, you need money, but you have to sign the right players. So I think that was Manchester United's problem. But the hand is convincing us now that okay, you can spend money after signing the right players and get it.
I mean, you talked about spending money and getting the right players, but if money wins you the titles, then why is it a case of Manchester City, the likes of Manchester City, PSG, these clubs that we know are owned by these investors, not winning the trophy that they want? That's the Champions League in this case.
Yeah, I don't think money wins titles in my opinion, because as you said, if money wins titles, City should have won the Champions League, PSG should have won it. Barca won't be in the precarious situation which they are right now. Chelsea at the same time, after splashing out cash earlier last season, they shouldn't be in the precarious situation they have. I think the right management with money. There are sometimes that you look at some people spending money and you say money is free, and them really not spending the money wisely. Chelsea signed Lukaku for about close to 100 million, and eventually the signing is sort of a disastrous signing. Manchester United signed the same Lukaku for close to that same amount, and it didn't end well. It didn't end well for them. If you go back to even City as well, City has made several big signings that didn't work well. Number one notable one was Mobile, which was their first big signing. It didn't end well for them as well. So I think the most important thing is for you to have a good sporting manager and the coach, the manager, sporting director and the manager being in sync together. For example, I'll bring another typical example, which is Spurs right now. Antonio Conte with the head of affairs in Tottenham. And Antonio Conte seems he needs to spend 1 billion before he can bring titles to Tottenham, and which I strongly sort of go against, because Antonio Conte spent big last summer. He spent big in my opinion. He bought a Richarlison, he bought Kulusevski during the winter transfer window, and the midfielder as well. He brought in Bissouma. I think he feels he needs to buy a whole team before he can bring in titles. And I'll remind him back to when he was in Chelsea. He didn't buy the whole team before he won titles.
He signed many players.
He didn't buy a whole team. How many players did he sign when he came to Chelsea?
The thing is that currently in Tottenham, he might not yet have found probably the players he wants. Look at him when he came to Chelsea that time. Moses was on the bench, but he started playing Moses. He was like, okay, I need this guy. Like, it looked like as if he already had players he wanted in Chelsea, few of them. So he bought more, and it worked for him now. He won the Premier League, same as Inter Milan when he went to Inter Milan too. Signed top of players and won the Premier League. Yes, he already signed some players in Tottenham, but I just feel like
big money players.
I just feel like they are not probably giving him what he wants yet.
For me, I just think he's a terrible person that is complaining with his tools at the moment. Because if I'm a player in Tottenham right now, how do you expect me to feel when my manager is going out there on every press conference complaining about us?
He shouldn't do that.
About us in every press conference, telling us we are not good enough.
He shouldn't do that.
And I feel it's not the way to go. And if you look at Claudio Ranieri in this last era, won the league spending less than 10 million.
Exactly.
He won the league spending less than 10 million.
But this is the stuff here. If you actually want to win titles, you have to splash money. If you want to be that top team, look at Newcastle now. Look at where they are. They might probably make Champions League football. What we are saying is not sure yet. Even if they don't make Champions, they'll make Europa. When was the last time they made Europa football? Like, when was the last time? We cannot even remember.
So the question I'll ask you about this same Newcastle is: did they splash money?
When?
Did they splash money?
They've been signing a lot of players.
How many players have they signed, and how much are those players?
They've signed more than 7 players.
How much do they cost?
I don't know, but they've signed more than 7 players. 40 million, 50 million, 30 million, 40 million, 50 million, 60
I,
million.
I can remember only
40
three.
million,
I
30
remember
million.
only 3 players that is signed with big names, and that's Grimares, Trippier, and Callum Wilson.
But all
And,
these,
okay, and Isak as well. Aside those
all
4,
these other
who
players
else?
they've been signing, all these 20 million players, 30 million players, if you bring the money, if you actually bring that money together, what I'm trying to say is that you still actually need money. Look at Manchester City, they've not won the Champions League yet, but look at them in the last 5 years, they've dominated the English Premier League. I think they've won 4 Carabao Cup now, back to back. They've won 4 Premier League titles in 5 years. They are dominating. Why? Because of the squad depth, the players they have. Guardiola signs players, he signs players every season.
For me, I think it's not about Guardiola signing players. I think it's more of Guardiola's way of management, in my opinion. I think Guardiola has galvanized the team so well to win matches, to win titles.
And he needs those players now. He still needs those players he signed.
I don't agree. I think it's more of Guardiola, from a Guardiola person, because Arteta, example, how much has he spent? Yes, he has signed players, I agree, but how much has he spent?
Arteta has signed players.
He has signed plenty players.
Last season, he spent the most money on players.
How much has he spent?
You know, Arsenal spent the most money on players last season. Yes.
No, I don't know.
If I'm wrong,
Chelsea.
If I'm wrong,
It's behind Chelsea. I'm sure it's behind Chelsea.
Last season.
Yes, I'm sure it's behind Chelsea, because Chelsea spent heavily as well last season.
But Arsenal spent a lot. Like, that's my point.
I agree. Arsenal spent a lot.
Obviously, you cannot just sign players and expect all of them to pick. You are signing players because you know that, okay, these are the kind of players I need. Then you give them a little bit of time to like pick up. Look at Arteta now, 3 years in Arsenal. When he came, he first won trophies, but he was not really in that right reading. But with time, now look at Arteta now. With those same players, he's doing well. So I just feel like if you want to win titles, yes, you still need money. Money is very important, but I feel like this one is more important. You signing the right players.
Exactly.
You signing the right players. But for you to sign those right players, you still have to have money. You must.
Manchester United has been spending. They've been spending.
They've not been signing the right. They've been
spending. They've been splashing out the cash, because we all know that when EPL top teams or EPL players clubs touch a player outside Europe, the price just multiplies. Automatically multiplies. As bad as Norwich, as bad as Nottingham Forest. If Nottingham Forest wants to go for a player and Sevilla wants to go for the same player, the price that Nottingham Forest will be buying it will be different from the price Sevilla is buying it.
Exactly.
Because the EPL just finds a way to multiply the prices.
Exactly.
In prices of players. So for me, I think it's more of the manager itself, the system, the coherence between the sporting director and the manager in getting the right players, identifying this is what I need, this is what I need, and bring them.
Money, you still need money.
So I think, from what you guys have said, I mean, it's a combination of different things, but at the same time, money is also a very key factor. Because I mean, you mentioned Leicester City. I don't know if you mentioned it now, but it's a thing that happens once in a while.
Exactly. I wanted to say that, like I forgot.
Spend a lot of money, or
you just win the title like that.
Yeah, but you win it, and that's why we don't see it. But the only constant thing in football right now, not just football, in anything really, is change. And I think football has evolved so much that money is a huge part of the game right now. And we might not agree on the transformation that these, the influx of these investors have brought to the game of football. But I think we also agree that, regardless of the pros and cons, it's always going to be a huge factor in the game of football. I mean, there's so many investors right now. Newcastle, you mentioned Newcastle, Manchester City, PSG, Qataris, so many investors. Even Inter Milan right now, their owner is also European, and
Chelsea's owner too.
Exactly. So it's a thing that is always going to call for conversation in the game of football, and it's a good thing as well at the end of the game. Alright guys, you can join in our conversation. Thank you so much for watching. If you've stayed until this point, please don't forget to drop your comments. Let's know what you think. Make sure to like, comment, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Where is the home of sports? Listen, the crazy thing about sports is that there is never a dull moment.
Yes, having uncommon conversations is the end thing here.
Football, tennis,
Formula 1,
UFC, boxing,
athletics,
and many more.
They
If you don't know, they hear if you don't know. Now why we they call them goats?
Sports Simplified.
That's Sportyfied. Who be your goats?